Have you ever heard that little voice in the back of your head that's like, I'm not paying enough attention to diabetes, or no matter how hard I work, it is never going to be good enough, or I need to hide my diabetes because I don't want other people to judge me, or even I'm not even going to check my blood glucose because there's no point. So if any of this sounds familiar, you might be going through what we call diabetes distress or even diabetes burnout. So in this video, what we're going to do is show you how to figure out if this is happening to you and what you can do about it. So let's get into it. Hey everyone, and welcome to Type 1 Diabetes World, where we give you the practical strategies to successfully manage T1D. So you might be wondering, what's the difference between diabetes distress and burnout, and how are these different from just feeling depressed? So we're going to talk about each of them. Let's start with diabetes distress. This is the emotional distress that comes from living with T1D and the burden of having to manage it nonstop every day, 24/7, 365 days a year with no holidays or vacations or any other benefits. So what are some of the ways that this might show up? You might feel frustrated or angry when you see numbers that you can't explain. Maybe you feel guilty about what you've eaten, or alone with T1D, like no one understands what you're going through. Maybe you're just overwhelmed. Almost everyone with diabetes has had thoughts like these at one time or another, and they tend to ebb and flow, kind of like a wave. Sometimes they'll be bigger and more overpowering, and other times you'll kind of ride them. About a third to a half of adults and adolescents experience diabetes distress at any given time, so you're definitely not alone. And these feelings are a normal part of having a chronic medical condition. Imagine a thermometer. Now, diabetes distress is kind of the lower temperature thoughts and feelings. And the more intense the feelings get, and that can happen a lot of times if they're pushed aside or they're ignored, they can morph into higher temperature diabetes burnout. Are you having these thoughts and emotions every day, most of the time? Are you feeling mildly bummed, or are you starting to yell at diabetes devices on a very loud and regular basis? So what's diabetes burnout then? Diabetes burnout is when you get so tired and feel so burdened by T1D that you stop doing the things that you need to do to take care of yourself. You might feel just totally detached from it, or you might start to just ignore it. And this can sound like, I don't want to think about diabetes, so I'm going to cut back on doing anything that might even remotely remind me of it. I'm not going to check. I'm not going to talk about it with my family. I'm definitely not going to go see my diabetes provider. Now, one question that it's important to ask is what's going on diabetes specific, or is it something broader like depression? And this is a good question because they can be similar in how they show up. You might have trouble concentrating or sleeping, or maybe you're just feeling helpless and hopeless or less motivated. And in order to figure this out, we actually need to look at the source. So with diabetes distress and burnout, diabetes is the direct cause. In depression, everything just kind of feels like a struggle, and a lot of times we can't necessarily pinpoint why exactly we're feeling so down. And what we know from the research is that whatever is going on, whether it's distress or burnout or depression, these can all take a toll not only on your general happiness and satisfaction with your life, but also your blood glucose levels and your long-term health. All right, so what can we do? Let's talk about 4 strategies that can be helpful for moving you forward from distress or burnout into a mindset where you can feel more accepting of your T1D and a little bit more at peace with your day-to-day experience. First, know that you don't have to be perfect. It is not a thing. The goal for most people with T1D is to be in target range at least 70% of the time. It is not 100% of the time. You don't need to be perfect to be healthy with diabetes. So if you feel like you're falling short all the time, it can be helpful to reset your expectations. Number 2, don't blame yourself. You are not the problem. Diabetes is the problem. And self-criticism and shame are so unbelievably common in the world of T1D. It's almost baked into the experience from day one. A lot of us have been told, if you don't do X, Y, and Z, bad things are going to happen. And I think that voice tends to just settle right in and make itself at home and stick with us. All this usually does is drain us of our energy and our hope. It doesn't actually move us forward. So what we can try to do is just notice when that voice comes in and try to get a little bit of separation from it. Here's something to try. When you notice that critical voice starting to come up or say something, it often starts with, I should. Try putting, I am having the thought that in front of it. So instead of saying something like, I am failing at diabetes, or I should be doing more for my diabetes, try, I am having the thought that I am failing at diabetes. I am having the thought that I should be doing more. Do you see how they sound just a little bit different? How there's just a little bit of distance there? Next tactic, when you're really stuck, take it a day at a time, or even just an hour at a time. And if you're up for it, you can try to pick one place to start and take a small step forward. Now, it's best if you can choose something that you can do rather than the goal of having, a certain number or a certain A1C, because numbers are not in our direct control, but our daily choices are. And when we can focus on consistent actions and choices, the numbers do usually follow. It's helpful to make your goal specific and doable. So dial in as much of the detail as you can. You could say something like, I am going to work on taking my insulin consistently before lunch, rather than I should take my insulin more. Also, make sure that this is something that matters to you. Other people are going to have opinions about what you should be doing with your T1D, and they'll probably try to set some goals for you. Maybe someone else thinks that you need to be pre-bolusing before meals, but you really want to get more active. Do the thing that has the most meaning for you and something that you can succeed at. Number 4, get support. Now, there are a few ways to do this. One is to connect with your T1D community, whether that's online or through local support groups or meetups. Particularly with burnout, I think we really just try to avoid getting involved with other people who have diabetes when we're feeling this way, because we don't want to be reminded again of diabetes. But actually, getting social support can be a great anti-burnout strategy. When you can share your story and not have to explain why you're frustrated, it's so powerful. You've got this sounds better than you should be doing this, a little voice in the back of our head. And the T1D community is pretty good at you've got this. Another way to get support is to ask your partner or a loved one for some hands-on help. If you're really burned out, sometimes a break from all of those demands can be really helpful. Now, this could be help filling prescriptions, or I literally had my partner count out 12 crackers or measure 1 cup of ice cream so that I knew the exact carb count. Your diabetes team can also be a good source of support here. If you can go into a visit and you can name these feelings that are happening for you, you can say like, I'm going through some major distress or burnout, or even, I'm feeling really depressed here. It can help your provider to do a better job of partnering with you and of listening to you, and looking at what's going on beyond just those blood glucose numbers. And it can make those visits feel a little bit less judgmental or scary and more supportive. If you're overwhelmed with feelings of depression or sadness, no matter what the cause is, try reaching out to a mental health professional, and preferably one who has experience helping people with diabetes or even just chronic medical conditions. And if you're unsure where to start there, talk with your diabetes team and ask if there's anybody that they can refer you to. You are not alone, and there is a way through this. All right, let's recap. Diabetes distress is the emotional distress that comes from the overwhelming, nonstop demands of T1D. And diabetes burnout can happen when distress levels become more intense and long-lasting, and it can cause us to ignore diabetes or to skip doing the things that we need to do to stay healthy. Strategies that can help are, number 1, managing expectations and remembering that you don't have to be perfect to be healthy. Number 2, don't blame yourself. Number 3 is to take things a day at a time. Choose one specific doable diabetes goal as a starting place. And number 4 is to get support from the T1D community, from loved ones, from your healthcare team, or from a mental health care professional. That's it for this video. If you found it helpful, please be sure to hit like and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.